Welcome to another Connecting the Community podcast. I am Marj Andre, the host of this podcast, where I talk, for the most part, to people doing good things in and around Richmond Hill. This podcast is a little bit of an exception, but I'll explain why. I actually feel very privileged to have as the podcast guest Chris Glover, MPP for Spadina, Fort York, official opposition critic for technology, development, and innovation, and democratic reform, and he is with the NDP party. It was a Richmond Hiller, Peter DeVita, that made the contact when I asked him, I need to talk to somebody about data centers and how they are being legislated. And he said, talk to Chris. So welcome, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Now, and it sort of started like a few weeks ago. I did a podcast with one of our municipal councillors, Carol Davidson, who has put forth a motion asking York Region to complete an infrastructure, capacity, and growth readiness assessment for data centers. And in Richmond Hill, there are 5 data centers run by 3 companies. So that sets the stage. So I've got lots of questions that I'm hoping that you can answer. But first, what has been your involvement with data centers?
Okay, so I am the Tech and Innovation Shadow Minister for the Ontario NDP. And I've got my own tech committee. We meet about once a month. Peter DeVita, the person you mentioned earlier, he's part of that tech committee. So that's how I've gotten to know him. The last couple of months, last few months, our focus has been on AI data centers because they have just exploded onto the political landscape. And I also hosted an AI data center roundtable at a conference of mayors and councillors from across Ontario and Ottawa last week. It's the AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference. So I hosted a roundtable there. And I heard a lot of concern from a lot of municipalities.
Okay, yeah, I'm very familiar with the AMO conference. I know our mayor was there, and I'm going to be reaching out to him with lots of questions. Now, the existence of data centers, it's an issue that goes back many years, or is it a relatively new concern?
So data centers have been around for a long time. There are 11. I'm the MPP for Spadina, Fort York. My riding's the downtown Toronto waterfront. There are 11 data centers in my riding, but there's none of the hyperscale ones. Since artificial intelligence really hit its stride in 2023, they've started really massively building these hyperscale data centers to accommodate the AI computing. And those are the ones that are causing all the controversy, particularly around the lack of transparency around water, around electricity, environmental and noise impacts, and also data sovereignty.
Yeah. Okay. So a data center itself is not, can be seen as a positive thing. Like, we do need them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do need data centers. When we turn on our computer and we, type something in to do a search, we want to get a result, and that result is coming, being filtered through a data center at some point. So we do need data centers just to maintain our computing power. But now, especially, with the tariff war that we're in with the United States, there's a lot of issues around it. Like, do we really want to be giving American corporations massive subsidies to locate data centers here when all the data that's located in those centers can be accessed by the American government through the Cloud Act? And so we've got to really be conscious about data sovereignty and building, data centers that are owned, operated, and controlled and hold Canadian data so that our data is safe from American government intervention.
Okay. Some important things to think about. So it's really the AI data centers. Like, are they just larger, more intense? Like, why do we have to really worry about these AI data centers?
AI data, it's just takes up a lot of computing power. It's like the other comparable would be blockchain. Blockchain, if you're invested in cryptocurrency, the security is done through blockchain. And it just means there's multiple calculations for each transaction to make sure that they're safe. And a friend of mine is an executive in Hydro-Quebec, and 15 years ago, he was telling me that blockchain companies wanted to locate in Quebec because they've got cheap hydroelectricity power. It's about 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And they had to limit the number of blockchain companies coming to Quebec because they weren't providing a lot of jobs, but they would have siphoned up any amount of electricity that Hydro-Quebec was willing to give them. Whereas Hydro-Quebec would rather invest in companies that are, for example, smelting aluminum, because the aluminum smelter, again, needs a huge amount of energy, but they provide a lot of good jobs as well. So there was a better trade-off for the Quebec people in allowing aluminum companies rather than blockchain. And it's similar. Quebec is putting restrictions on AI data centers as well.
So let's talk about the issues with electricity use, water use, the cooler systems, noise, poor use of employment lands, and possible cybersecurity issues. That's something that Peter's brought up to me. So I'd like to go through each of these issues. So do you want to, let's start with talking about electricity use.
Huge amount of electricity use. Like Virginia and Texas really opened their states up to AI data centers, and they are sort of the canary in the coal mine. I think it's 23 Virginia electricity now goes to data centers. And it's less than that in Texas, but it's a huge amount. Across the United States, it's 4% of all electricity generated is going to these hyperscale data centers. So they will siphon up any amount of electricity. There are 2,000 AI data centers in the United States right now. There's another 600 being planned. The Alberta wants 400 just in their province, 40 in their province. So they, these things are being built as fast as they can possibly build. The big tech companies are investing trillions of dollars, like literally trillions of dollars in AI data centers to build these things as quick as possible, because they all are afraid of falling behind and not being the global leader in AI development.
Okay. Well, okay. I think we do need to be paying attention to what is happening, but I think we have to go back and get sort of a lesson on electricity. Like when you say so many gigawatts or megawatts, I really don't comprehend it. So, I think we need to start thinking about it. You putting it as a percentage of our electricity, I think is a good way to start. But I really think we need to go back and take a basic electrical engineering issues.
The other aspect about electricity, to build an electrical power station takes 10 to 15 years. So it's not like we can, but it only takes a couple of years to build an AI data center. So, you cannot possibly build the electricity capacity that they need as quickly as you can build the data centers. So what ends up happening is the data centers are burning, around the world, different things. They're burning natural gas or fossil fuels of some type, including coal. And so they're increasing, the risk of global warming that we're in the midst of. That's one of the concerns, the environmental concerns for the neighbors about, having diesel generators running. Often it's diesel generators running next door. The other environmental impact for neighbors of these data centers is noise. And it's not a high decibel level of noise, but it's consistent and never ending. And so if you, just have this white noise in the background of your home or your neighborhood, and it never goes away, that can be really annoying and cause some mental health issues.
Woo. Okay. Now, back to the issue of power usage. Like, is there concern that we're not going to have enough power, or the price of electricity will go sky high?
That's been happening in the United States. A lot of, some communities they've seen their electricity bill skyrockets because of the data centers. And I will say one of the reasons that there's so much suspicion and opposition to the data centers is that the companies that are operating them were not transparent at the beginning. Like often they would create a shadow company to go in, negotiate. They would schmooze the local politicians, take them out for golf games. They talk about, we're going to build this data center in your community. It's going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. You're going to get tax revenue. We'll take care of the electricity. You don't have to worry about anything. And then it turns out that that's not some small company that, it was actually Meta behind the whole thing. And the jobs, once the construction jobs are done, the permanent jobs are few and far between because the computers just run themselves. There's also a lot of concern. A lot of people are losing their jobs to AI right now. And so they're thinking, why are we building data centers that are going to increase the capacity of AI to take their jobs? And so there's been a lack of transparency. Yeah. And even when I was meeting with municipal councillors and mayors last week in Ottawa, they're deeply concerned because the government playbook on AI, the Ford government's playbook on AI, one of the things is they want to remove the power of municipalities to veto data centers. And that's a real concern, because the municipal councillors and mayors are elected to protect their communities, and they're, elected to protect their water resources, their electricity resources. Those are often delivered through public municipal utilities. Also noise and pollution and the land around. Like, they don't want a massive land grab for a company that's not going to provide long-term permanent jobs. There's a lot of concern around the way this has been handled and a lot of distrust, both because of the way these large tech companies have been handling the rollout of data centers and also because of the Ford government's approach to this. They're saying they're going to, Ontarians don't need to worry, like the Ontario government's been saying, Ontarians don't need to worry that all this will be protected by the Environmental Act. Well, this government, the Ford Conservative government's gutted the Environmental Act, and they've also implemented Bill 5, passed Bill 5, which allows them to build a data center or any other project with complete disregard and override any provincial or municipal law without that override being debated in the legislature. So any minister, any of Ford's ministers can just say, oh yeah, you want to build a data center in Brampton? Yeah, go ahead. And don't worry about the environmental laws. Don't worry about the Endangered Species Act. Don't worry about, community consultation. We'll override all of that. You just go ahead. And, they call that cutting red tape. But what it means is the municipality and the municipal residents may end up subsidizing these data centers with higher utility bills, both water and electricity, persistent noise and a huge loss of land that could have gone to a company that's actually going to provide jobs.
Definitely. Now, I feel like there needs to be a tallying of the actual use of electricity from the data centers. I think that was the issue that our councillor Carol Davidson had. Like, we have no idea actually what the situation is.
I think, this is where we need greater transparency. And so the NDP has asked for a pause on the building of data centers until we have regulations in place that will protect residents from having to subsidize these data centers with higher utility bills, higher electricity and water bills, persistent noise, and other environmental impacts. Like they should, like any company that wants to come into a municipality or into a region, should come up with a plan and say, hey, look, this is what we're going to provide. These are some of the drawbacks. And we recognize that when you're opening up a business and industry, there will be some drawbacks, but, people need to see both sides of that balance sheet. For example, Waterloo, I was talking to some people from Waterloo, they're interested. It's the tech hub, one of the tech hubs of Canada, one of the best known. The Southern Ontario area here is the fastest growing tech and innovation area in North America, second only to Silicon Valley. They want to maintain that edge. And so they're interested in data centers, but Kitchener-Waterloo is dependent on an underground aquifer for their water. So if a data center is going to locate there, they want a clear plan that they're not going to drain out the aquifer and people will be short on water.
Yeah, we have the Oak Ridges Moraine here, so it is a concern as well. But is there a real concern of us running out of electricity?
So the question is, how are these data centers going to generate electricity, or how are they going to get the electricity? Because they want to build in the next 2 to 3 years and be online, and there's just no way to increase our grid capacity by the amount that they need within that period of time. It takes 10, as I said, it takes 10 to 15 years to build an electrical power station. So, but things can be done. You just need a plan, and you need a transparent plan, and you need to consult with the communities that are going to be impacted so that they know, this is what's being planned. It's when these big companies, the big tech companies or the government is forging ahead without a plan, without revealing the plan to the people, that people become distrustful, because they know if there's no transparency, they're probably going to be getting ripped off. And so they, without transparency, you engender a lot of distrust and a lot of pushback.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what is the situation with water? From what I've read and understood, data centers have sort of evolved. They have a closed loop system, and they're not using as much water. Is that the case?
Yeah. So it's possible to do it that way with a closed loop system. In Toronto, we have a company called M-Wave, and it was actually championed and supported by Jack Layton. This is one of his legacy projects, but it's deep water cooling. So there are pipes that go deep into Lake Ontario, pipe in cold water into the city. They cool a lot of the downtown. Like I mentioned before, mine is the downtown waterfront. When you're driving along the Gardiner Expressway past all those high rises, that's the heart of my riding. And a lot of those towers are actually cooled by cool water from the bottom of Lake Ontario. And so it is possible to have a closed loop cooling system where you're not polluting the lake. You're just, pumping in cold water. It gets warmed up through the system, and it goes back out, and goes back into the lake and gets replaced with cool water. It's just like the radiator in a car. That's a closed loop system. So that's a possibility for sure. But, if a company is going to be doing that, there should be a plan. City planners should be able to look at that and say, yeah, this will work. Or maybe they need to make some changes to make it safe for communities.
I'm wondering if the bylaws need to be revised.
I think, what you're doing, you mentioned one of the councillors there in Richmond Hill is asking for a feasibility study, a capacity study for electricity use. That makes a lot of sense. This is what municipalities should be doing, is getting the data together so that they know what they have and what they're capable of accommodating.
Okay, no, good. Now, the noise, is there legislation that regulates noise, or are you saying that the noise is at a level that's not sort of below the radar?
Yeah, so the big problem with the noise, it's not the high decibel. It's not like 90, 100 decibels. It's just a persistent level of noise. And it's like white noise in the background. And so it never goes away. And this is what people who are, housed, like a lot of the data centers, the first rollout, as I mentioned, there was no transparency. They just, literally went into the big tech companies, literally went into a bunch of communities, made sweetheart deals with local officials with all kinds of promises that were not entrenched in paper, like on paper. And those promises got broken. And they often located right beside residential communities. And so these residences now have a persistent background noise from the data centers, and it's driving them literally crazy because they can never escape it. It's not something you can, turn off, and it's not like even temporary. It's permanent.
Okay. Yeah, the ones in Richmond Hill are not right in residential areas, and I don't know if the proximity is causing a problem. So I think I'm going to have to find out more about the local ones.
One of the things, the residents of Richmond Hill, this is their community. We live in a democracy. They have a right to know what's being planned in their community. And this is where I would say the Ford Conservative government has failed people time and time again. They just they make backroom deals, and then the communities end up suffering and dealing with the fallout from these deals.
So we've already mentioned it, but there's one of the criticisms for data centers is that it does not provide lots of good jobs. In Richmond Hill, there is very little employment land left. And I really question, do we want to give it to a data centers where you have so few opportunities or jobs? No one's going out for lunch in the local restaurants. Yeah, I think we need to tally.
So this is where Yeah, this is where we need a strategy, a province-wide and even a national strategy around AI data centers. Like, what is the best location for an AI data center? Like, where do we have industrial lands that could be put to better use, and provide more jobs? And where is the room for data centers, particularly Canadian-owned and operated data centers that are protecting Canadian data? How do we utilize? We've got a lot of land. And we've got a lot of opportunity here because, as I mentioned, the deepwater cooling in Lake Ontario, well, Lake Superior is I think the first or second largest, freshwater lake in the world. And if you've ever tried to dip your toes in it, it is freezing bloody cold. So there's got to be some opportunity for cooling up there too. But, local communities have to be involved, and local communities need to know that there's going to be some long-term permanent jobs coming into these things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I really can't ascertain what this cybersecurity risk could be. Can you shed some light on this?
So AI, artificial intelligence, is really a computer mind.
Yeah.
And that's what it's based on. It was designed, in Toronto, at the University of Toronto. And they tried to create, like, our brains operate in neural networks. So there's a whole bunch of neurons that are all connected with electrical impulses. And they actually created a computer program that operates on that same principle. So it's a neural network. So artificial intelligence is literally a computer brain. And these, the AI agents are smarter than us, than any of us, because they have access to all of the data that's on the internet. And so they're learning from all of that all of the time. In some ways, they're dumber because they don't have common sense. They don't know a lot of things. But these AI agents, when you're looking at cracking a security code to access a company or an agency's data, this becomes it's cybersecurity risk on steroids, because it's not some hacker, in a dark room somewhere in the world trying to hack into your data. It's now he's equipped with artificial intelligence. And the cybersecurity firms are also, working with artificial intelligence. So it's increased. This cybersecurity war that's been going on has now been escalated with artificial intelligence on both sides.
Okay, more that we need to be paying attention to.
And I will say one of the things, like, if anybody's interested, it's Professor Jeffrey Hinton, who is the professor who created artificial intelligence. He's from the University of Toronto, and a brilliant, brilliant man. But he was even saying he keeps money in different banks because he's afraid of the cybersecurity risk posed by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I have paid attention to what Hinton has been saying. So, should there be amendments to building regulations or bylaws or laws?
So what we're proposing is we need a set of regulations around artificial intelligence. We need, and these would include transparency so that people are aware. There's consultation with the community, and there's a transparent and a complete plan. And the plan would include, electricity usage, water usage, and a plan for each of those, for noise, for pollution, so that all of these things are taken care of so that people can have some confidence in knowing what is coming to their community.
Yeah, I think the residents need to be paying more attention and really trying to understand the issue well, and really paying attention when they're voting.
Yeah, you don't want to be fighting this one after the data center's already up and running. You want to get in there before they break ground, and that's why there's a real push. There's got to be a real push. We've got municipal elections happening across the province right now. People should be asking the council and mayoral candidates where they stand. Will they guarantee that they will, be transparent and, not accept the data center unless there is a clear plan that's been gotten approval from the community?
Yes, I do ask questions to all municipal candidates, and data center question is on that list. So, yeah. Okay. Now, the provincial election is probably not imminent, but when the time comes, do you think data centers will be a big issue? And has the NDP really been studying this issue?
Oh yeah, we've been working on it. I've been working on this issue for a number of years on artificial intelligence, and more recently the data centers that are, that are required to make them operate. And we are developing policies around this. And it's just good government policy. Like, all we're asking for is that there be a plan, that it be put out to the community. The community have an opportunity to consult. And it's not that we're going to please everybody, but you've got to, the way it's being done right now with Ford stripping communities of the right to veto a data center that may be harmful to the community, that's undemocratic. And we need to restore our democratic rights in Ontario. Ford's even, appointing now regional chairs who can govern with a minority of votes on the council. And so, and if people are not aware of that, please look into it, because it is a gross attack on our municipal democracies in Ontario. Even the Association of Municipalities of Ontario took a stand and said, this is appalling that the government is replacing elected chairs that we would normally be voting for in October in Ontario with appointed chairs. So Ford is going to control the regional municipalities of most of the people in the province of Ontario.
Well, yeah, and as I think Richmond Hill is part of a regional government, so it's something we do need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would just say, I think the biggest thing to consider here, and my other critic portfolio is democracy, democratic right. And I am deeply concerned about the erosion of our democratic rights over the last years in Ontario. We no longer have the right to democratic municipal elections. That came out of Ford's actions to change the rules of the municipal election in Toronto in 2018. We no longer have the right to majority vote decision making in most of our municipalities. The mayor and a third of councillors can override a vote by 2/3 of councillors. Ford is openly appointing, judges, conservative judges, when judges are supposed to be nonpartisan and impartial. That's actually a constitutional right. He's passed 3 bills using the notwithstanding clause to strip Ontarians of their charter rights. And then when you're looking at something like artificial intelligence and the data centers that go with them, and these being imposed on communities, we are losing the democratic tools that we need to protect our communities and our interests in the long term. And so I would say the data centers is a very, very important issue, and people need to get involved. But they also need to be fighting back and protecting our democratic rights in this province so that we have the tools to fight back.
Well, thank you for saying that. Okay. I ask everyone at the end of a podcast the same question. The question is, if you had a magic wand and could make the world a little better, what is one thing you would change in the world?
Wow, just one. I would, so many. I mean, it's absolutely appalling that anybody goes hungry in this world when we've got more than enough food to feed everybody. Like, that's a failure of our economic system. It's appalling that we've got in Ontario 85,000 people who are homeless now, and an addiction crisis that's spiraling out of control without any government help to help people get housed and overcome addiction. I would say I would address those things. So I can't limit it to one, but I would say let's address the human crises in particular that are right here in Ontario. We've got a homelessness crisis, we've got an addiction crisis, and we've got a food insecurity, because 1 in 5 families in Ontario is now dependent on food banks. So, let's fix those things first and foremost, so that everybody, can stay alive. So everybody has a place to live and food to eat.
Thank you for saying that. Well, I really appreciate all of your time, Chris, and good luck with all of your work. We will be paying attention, and I'll make it my job to make sure that people really do here in Richmond Hill think about these issues.
Fantastic. Marj, thanks for doing the podcast and keeping people informed. There's been a real loss of local media, and it's great that people like you are stepping into that breach and filling it. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for listening. I would appreciate you sharing this podcast. consider emailing me at Marj, M-A-R-J, at marjandre.com. I would welcome suggestions for podcast guests. Let's stay connected.